Sui, the Tang, and the Song were all prominent dynasties. People practiced the ideologies of Confucianism, Taoism, and legalism. Women practiced filial piety, which means that they looked up to the male figures, and the children looked up to the parents, and the peasants looked up to the government, mostly the emperors. So, Confucianism influenced the civil service exam in which peasants were able to participate in the bureaucracy, but it was mainly the rich people. And China traded silk, gunpowder, and paper.
Classic India was an amazing civilization. This first began with the Aryan people settling in the Indian subcontinent around 1500 BCE. They created a caste system which divided the four caste systems consisting of the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the warrior class, the Sadrans, and the peasants. For the religion, Buddhism focused on outseeing the caste, because Hinduism would focus on the facts that the castes were stuff that you had to follow, but Buddhism said that you could reach eternal life in heaven regardless of your caste. The truth for Buddhism was that all life has suffering. Suffering came from desires, and it could be ended by not wanting those desires. To continue, the Gupta dynasty was basically the golden age. Golden age for India. It consisted of the leader, Ashoka the Great, leading civilizations to rock edicts, which basically kept his civilization in order for his people to thrive.
In the beginning, Rome was governed by a king who was chosen by the most important families in the city, the patricians. The king was helped by the Senate, an assembly formed by senators who are the heads of the leading family. Rome owes much of its early history to the combination of the three groups, the Etruscans, Latins, and Greeks. Etruscan domination ended in 509 when Tarquin the Proud was expelled. In 509 BCE, Rome was emerging as an expanding republic. A republic is when the government is governed by the citizens that elect representatives to rule on their behalf. Roman expansion occurred due to wars, for example, the Punic Wars. During these wars, foreigners were captured and used as slaves. And when Julius Caesar was killed, he was killed due to his barbaric ways. And he was the ultimate reason as to why that the Roman Republic came to an end was because of competition between the consuls, which ultimately led to their downfall. Christianity spread throughout the Roman Empire around 0 AD, and after the crucifixion of Christ became really popular. The Romans possessed a powerful army and were gifted in the applied arts of law, government, city planning, and statecraft. They also acknowledged and adopted contributions of many ancient people, most notably the Greeks, much of whose culture was preserved as a result.
Around the time of 1500 BCE, the Mayans began to establish what is now known as Central America. To provide for the large population of city dwellers, the Mayans practiced what is called slash and burn agriculture. They created fields by cutting down trees and plants in a forest and then burning them. The resulting ashes fertilized the soil. The Maya also terraced fields to limit erosion of the land they had cleared on hillsides. They drained swamps and built irrigation systems to water their crops. For meat, the Mayans hunted deer. Eventually, they would learn how to raise their deer. Their main crop was corn and beans and squash. It was referred to as the Three Sisters. For the cities, they used mainly stone tools. To cut and shape limestone blocks to build their religious centers. They built many pyramids where they used as their religious sanctuaries to pray to the gods. The most important temples were located on top of pyramids to be closer to the heavens. They were almost up to 200 feet high. The Mayan government. The main form of the Mayan government was a city-state, each one ruled by a king consisting of a city and its surrounding territories. Most of the rulers were men. However, when no male heir was available or old enough to govern, the Mayan women ruled. Wars between city-states were common, and sometimes the winner absorbed the loser. The destruction of forests caused environmental damage, and stresses between cities led to increasing wars. The climate shifted, which resulted in many years of drought. All of these changes contributed to the decline of the Mayans.
City-states started around 800 BCE, but the problem is that they were separated by really difficult terrain, which ended them up becoming different city-states, which were called policies. And they all had their own different local governments. The strongest of the two city-states were Sparta and Athens. Sparta, there was an oligarchy with two kings at the top. Also in Sparta, that they really focused on their military, which led women to have more rights because the men were always fighting. And it was really prized for the women living there because if they raised good sons when they started child rearing the soldiers, they were extremely prized. They were able to have their own homes, they owned their own property, and even receive an education. While in Athens, there was a democracy, a direct democracy, and they used and they voted on ceramic pots that were broken, and they were and it was mainly governed. It was only men, and women had very little rights in Athens compared to Sparta, due to Council 500, which was
The residing government in Athens.
council of nobles, and there was two high archons on the top, which were pretty much, let's just say, our president and our vice president, pretty much.
Pericles was one of the most famous people in Greek government. What he did was he transferred the power of the Athenian government into an assembly, which was known as the Council of 500. During Pericles' reign, it was known as the Golden Age for Greece.
Architecture was very symbolized by huge columns and extremely slanted roofs. So the most significant was the Parthenon. But since Athens and Sparta since they were always just clashing the entire time, it ended up in war because Athens expected, because they're we're so much more advanced than you guys are, expected the other city-states to pay taxes. So Sparta and its allies came together and became known as the Peloponnesian League. And from there, the Peloponnesian War started, which was between 431 and 404 BCE. And since Sparta and its allies won, there was no more democracy at dawn. Due to this Macedonian king named Alexander the Great, and through his conquests, he was able to spread Grecian culture around the world. That's why you see Buddhism, how people depict the Buddha in long togas, and through the Persian Empire, you can see tons of walls covered in these banquet scenes with people just dressed in clothes that amplify the Greek. There was such books the Odyssey, which we even read now today. Greece still is and will always be one of the most important civilizations because it created a foundation where it created a foundation for democracy and for ideas and other.
Beginning in 599 BCE, under Cyrus the Great, the Persians conquered land from the Aegean Sea all the way to the borders of India. The empire known as the Achaemenid Empire, sometimes called the First Persian Empire. It united three of the early centers of civilization, Mesopotamia, Egypt, and India, into one powerful empire. It was the largest, most diverse empire in the world, including more than 70 ethnic groups. Under Darius I, Persia divided land it conquered into provinces so that king's policies announced in the capital of Persepolis could be administered throughout the empire. Darius created a new position called the satrap, which is a ruler of a province who was responsible to the emperor, not local leaders. The royal road, which spanned some 1,500 miles across the empire, was the most famous of the networks of roads built to encourage trade. Darius added efficient courier service with postal stations along the road. Instituted a common currency that was accepted across the empire. Darius also instituted the construction of caravanserai, which were combination inns and markets for people traveling the royal road by camel caravan. One of the most important legacies of the Persians was the spread of monotheism, the belief in only one God. Zarathustra was a Persian prophet who, at the age of 30, believed he had seen visions of God, who they called Ahura Mazda, the creator of all that is good and who alone is worthy of worship. This was a departure from previous Indo-Persian polytheism, and Zoroaster has been termed the first non-biblical monotheist. Persian society had much the same social stratification as earlier empires. However, because of its size, it had a larger class of educated, well-paid government workers. The cost of the battles with the Greeks severely damaged the Persian Empire. Further, Xerxes began to take a less tolerant attitude toward non-Persians of the empire. Together, these forces began to undermine the strength of the Persian Empire.